Hello, my name's Cole Hampton. I am in Music 3030, and this is my submission for our assignment Rock Encounter 4 Song Exploder Screencast. I decided to do my project on the song Boys Don't Cry by The Cure. My parents were always really into 80s music, and they raised us kids on 80s music, so it is still our favorite era to this day, and it's the majority of what I listen to is from the 80s. It's really hard to find a song from the 80s that I don't like. And The Cure has always been my favorite band, and Boys Don't Cry was always that top song for me. So figured perfect song to do my project on. Wasn't really sure how I wanted to format it, but I figured the easiest way for me would be to write a paper on it and then just kind of read that to you. It's the easiest way for me to express myself. So here's the paper I wrote on the song Boys Don't Cry by The Cure. Is it possible for music to have such a profound impact on a generation that it completely alters how society views a specific topic from that moment onward? This is exactly what the late 70s to early 80s band The Cure accomplished. They did so by remaining true to themselves, expressing their views on matters publicly through their music, and refusing to be compressed into the box that society has deemed to be the social norm, specifically the gender norm. Forming in 1978 and releasing their debut album in 1979, up-and-coming band The Cure exploded onto the post-punk and new wave scene, eventually adopting an increasingly darker style that heavily influenced the emerging gothic rock genre and goth subculture. It was clear that The Cure had a great impact on the ever-developing music world, but what many people fail to ponder is how much their music potentially affected an entire generation and eventually altered for the better the way society views gender norms. In 1979, the band released their second standalone single, Boys Don't Cry. This song was among one of the most influential songs they would come to release. The song's lyrics tell of a man who has taken his significant other for granted and comes to the realization that he has misjudged their limits and pushed them past the point of no return. In turn, he copes with this major loss and internal pain by covering up his emotions with laughter and lies, a very common reaction that plagues both older generations and even modern-day men and women. Lead vocalist and songwriter Robert Smith stated in an interview with New Musical Express regarding the meaning of the song. He said, "As an English boy at the time, you're encouraged not to show your emotion to any degree, and I couldn't help but show my emotions when I was younger. I never found it awkward showing my emotions. I couldn't really continue without showing my emotions. You'd have to be a pretty boring singer to do that, so I kind of made a big thing about it. I thought, well, it's part of my nature to rail against being told to do not to do something." Smith quite clearly outlines his intentions behind the lyrics. In the interview, he paints a vivid picture in the listener's mind of a time when boys were encouraged not to show your emotion to any degree, and how he not only vehemently disagreed, but ran in the opposite direction of this way of thinking. By doing so, he was utilizing pathos and appealing to those who felt the same way but may have been too afraid to express their feelings on the matter or to make a change. The song helped these listeners combat feelings of loneliness by experiencing a sense of community and, for the first time for many, finding a place where they fit in. This is extremely important to a group of people, such as goths, who often feel like social outcasts and are desperate to be seen and have their voices heard. When thinking about gender norms, a typical mind jumps straight to women and how they're expected to stay home, care for the children, cook, clean, etc. While this way of thinking has proven to be toxic and repressive to the social evolution of mankind, one often forgets to acknowledge how gender norms can affect men as well. Men, just like women, have been forced into their own box that society refuses to allow them to break out of. Men must be brave, stoic, providers, leaders of the pack, the list goes on. And if for any reason men fall outside of these categories, showing any kind of weakness or emotion, they are immediately categorized as a girl or a pansy. This leads to the repression of emotions and can have a very negative effect on a man's psyche and even his interpersonal relationships. In the article Meta-Analysis of Gender Differences in Self-Compassion, author Lisa M. Yarnell explains the results of multiple studies that quantify just how much of an effect gender norms can have on the amount of self-compassion that men and women allow themselves. Within the article, Yarnell et al. Stated, research indicates that adherence to masculine gender norms is associated with lower levels of self-compassion. Male socialization patterns emphasizing emotional restrictiveness and stoicism may also mean that self-compassion is less accessible to men than women. So here it can be seen that men are typically forced into this sort of emotional restrictiveness and stoicism that leads to the bottling of emotions and lack of compassion for themselves and ultimately others. This way of thinking is outdated and poisonous to society because feeling and showing emotions, whether woman or man, is intrinsic to a healthy human's genetic makeup. There is a clear correlation between these findings and the meaning behind the lyrics of the song Boys Don't Cry by The Cure. In the song, the singer says, I tried to laugh about it, cover it up with lies, hiding the tears in my eyes, 'cause boys don't cry. This is a prime example of this archaic way of thinking that prevents boys from expressing their emotions and properly working through their problems in a healthy and effective manner. As time progresses, so do humans and their views on matters. Like the tides of the ocean, one generation moves out and a new one flows in, holding updated values and principles close to their heart. It is important to remain patient as it is a slow but sure process. The way society views boys showing emotion today has vastly improved since the release of the song Boys Don't Cry, but there is still a long way to go. By means of certainly uncomfortable conversations and the continued release of influential music, change is bound to occur. It is up to the current and future generations to erode the stigma associated with harsh and unfair gender norms, paving the way for a new world that not only recognizes that boys do cry, but also reinforces the very real truth that boys, as well as any emotionally healthy human being, should cry.